evening, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Happy 4th of July, Independence Day Eve. I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. I almost forgot that it was a holiday eve. Okay. And so I don't know where my day went, y'all. I have no idea where my day went. I have been working so hard to get this show put together for you guys today, and doing some research and getting some eyewitness accounts and all that for the Paulding Werewolves. Now, I know these are not the most popular werewolves. You probably never even heard of them except for maybe on my show before. But I've always hesitated to do a show on the Paulding Werewolves because that's my hometown. And I didn't want anybody to know where I lived. Okay, so it was not public. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to talk about it too much, but I don't live there anymore. Okay, so we actually our family's farm used to be there. It's still there. We just don't have it anymore, and all that kind of stuff. But my roots go deep into this area, and you guys would be shocked. You're going to be shocked, probably. I don't know. I'm kind of shocked, but kind of not, to find out that there have been multiple. I'm talking about over 24 werewolf and Dogman sightings and reports, and Bigfoot sightings and reports in Paulding County, Georgia. Now that is in Northwest Georgia. And yeah, we're gonna talk about I'm gonna talk about all of them that I have. Okay. And it just so happens that my father had an incident where, and shout out to my dad. My dad may be watching tonight. This might be the first time live ever. So anyway, see, I got my trophy back here. My dad gave me, y'all. Okay, my racing trophy. So Dad's probably watching tonight. I did talk with him today. He gave me an eyewitness encounter of his own, which he has always believed that what he saw was an alpha coyote. But I don't think it was a coyote. And we're going to go there today. Gosh, I'm going to give you all the details about his encounter out there on our farm with something he believed was a gigantic all-black coyote out there, which is very odd, very unusual for this area. And we've got a lot more reports. And it also turns out that BFRO, we're going to go through some of these BFRO reports tonight, because a lot of times people go out to take a report for a Bigfoot, and it turns out to probably be a Dogman. Okay, and we have some of those reports as well. And it just so happens that the head of one of my teams took this report. Okay, one of the reports that was right down the street from where I lived. Okay, and about, I'm going to say about a mile as the crow flies from our farm. Okay, a giant, I think it was like a 9 to 10 foot werewolf. I mean, huge out there. And I have some sheriff's reports by ear. Okay, this is by ear. I don't have the written reports. I have what I was told. I am friends with some deputies out there, and a 911 dispatcher as well, several 911 dispatchers out there. And so I compiled some information from them as well. So if you guys are from Paulding County, shout out to Paulding County tonight. And you guys are going to be tickled to know what the North Paulding High School, and I guess it's the high school, what their mascot is too. It's no coincidence that they may just be the wolf pack, right where these wolfman sightings are. Okay, so get your popcorn, y'all. We got a lot to discuss. This is a remote viewing show. I have remote viewed 2 of these encounters. One happened to be one of the encounters. I believe it's one of the encounters that the head of my team had taken a while back in 2007, I believe. That's one of them. And the other one is the North Paulding Werewolf. Okay. And so this is going to be fantastic. Now, Dennis Carroll is joining me tonight, but he's not here yet. Okay. So I kind of, y'all, I got so busy today, I forgot that I didn't have a co-host for the show tonight. So Dennis is so gracious. He's going to hop on last minute with me today and come on. And if he's late, y'all, I'm prepared to do this all solo dolo tonight too, because this is my roots. This is where I grew up, and this is what I know. Okay, this is what I know. And so, all right, if you guys would like to follow along with all of my archives of my shows and join my Patreon is actually where all of this data is located. If you guys would like to see all the raw remote viewing data, these are 2 coordinate remote viewing targets, and they are on my Patreon. I do have all the pictures and things that I'm going to show tonight, the maps, are on my Patreon as well. So it's kind of like my whole presentation right there. And the data is in the picture section up there if you guys want to go check that out. So go over to my website. That's the cryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my information over there, all my social media links, whatever you need. It's all there. And this is the link to my Patreon if you guys are wanting to find that today. And thank you to all my Patreon members. You guys are the best. I appreciate y'all so much. Also, I have my shop on Etsy. You can find that. We're Woman Goods. The links are there on my website as well. And as I always say, I'm going to be at the Full Disclosure Now conference coming up on July the 15th through the 18th. And that's the discount code on the screen if you're interested in that. Okay. Oh, I did also add the Molina Bigfoot Festival is going to be in November. So if you guys want to come to that. And I have a Bigfoot, what is it, a Comic-Con, I think, in Murphy, North Carolina. That is in, I think it's in September, second week of September. I'll be there at that. And there's some other events too. I just don't know what they are. Okay. The dates seem to be changing quite a bit on those. So as soon as I can lock down the real dates, I will let y'all know. Okay, well, let's get to the show, shall we? Okay, for decades, Bigfoots, werewolves, and dogmen sightings have been reported in Paulding County, Georgia. This is in northwest Georgia via official eyewitness accounts and calls into the local law enforcement departments, which would be like the 911 centers. Of those sightings, there are over 24 reports of a bipedal beast standing over 7 feet tall with dark gray fur and blazing red eyes. Sightings of the creature have been consistent in this description. Okay, I was tasked with 2 coordinate remote viewing targets, including the North Paulding Werewolf and a report from 2007 involving a family who saw a 9 to 10 foot tall bipedal wolf-like creature on the way to dinner one evening. This creature just happened to be a couple of miles from my family farm, and I have a firsthand encounter from my dad, actually, and we're going to discuss that tonight. And plus, I have spoken today with a 911 dispatcher from Paulding, actually former dispatcher, and she was refreshing my memory on some of the reports and calls that came in that she could tell me about while she was working there. Okay, so let's get to it. Dennis is not here, y'all, yet. So let's just get into what we're talking about today. I'm going to go over a little history of, and just show you guys like where Paulding County is on the map, where it is. A lot of y'all in here tonight, y'all might not even be from the United States. Okay, you might not know where Georgia even is. So I'm going to show you on a map. I'm sure everybody knows where Georgia is. Okay, but maybe not. I don't know. We have a very international audience here, and so let's see. Okay. Let's see. This is Paulding County right here, northwest Georgia, home of Jessica right there. Okay, this is where I went to. I grew up. Okay, I grew up in this area right here, and I always told you guys, I grew up on a farm. I used to look out to the sky for UFOs when I was a little kid. This is where my house was, our farm, where I was worried because we had curtains that were made of lace, and I felt like things were watching me through my windows at night. And things like that. I had no idea that the things of fairy tales were actually real. Okay, and this is actually kind of the way this werewolf has been described in some of these reports that we're going to go over tonight out of Paulding County, Georgia. Now, of course, the county is divided up into different regions, and there's actually 2 different sections, 2 areas where these werewolves and even Bigfoots as well, or dogmen. I think a lot of these are dogmen, but they're cited in the number 4 up there at the top, North Paulding, and then in the section that's labeled number 3, the green section down there on the bottom. That would be the South Paulding area, and probably in a little bit of 2, but the sightings that we're going to be going over tonight are actually in the 3rd region down there of Paulding. Okay, so I'm putting Paulding on the map tonight, y'all, when it comes to the cryptid world. So yeah, shout out to all my Paulding people, like I said. Okay, so how about we go over some of these reports? Okay, and I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let's start going over some of these reports out of the BFRO And one of them is one that the head of my team actually took. You guys are going to get to see this live and direct tonight as we go over some of these reports. This is from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, Paulding County, Georgia, right here. Let's see. I'll wait for that to come up on the screen. Okay. Amazing. Okay, so let's go over some of these reports, because some of these could be Bigfoots. I think a lot of them are actually Dogmen, aka werewolves. Okay, but I want you to see how big these things are. Okay, I think it's important to set the tone for these targets tonight. Okay, so in January, this is like from the most recent that are listed on the BFRO website to the earliest. Okay, which is May 2004. When a law enforcement official saw something, okay, himself. So this is in January of 2015. Let's say they call this a Class B sighting here in Paulding County. And so this is a family who said that they had a sighting directly behind their home in the woods in Rockmart, Georgia. Okay, Rockmart is actually at the north part of Paulding County. Right beside, I think that's Polk County, which touches Floyd County, which is where, our friend Kenny Starfox from the North American Dogman Project came on, and we talked about the Georgia werewolf attack. Now that is where the Georgia werewolf attack happened, and so was in Floyd County, right above this county. All right, so just keep that in mind. This is in Rockmart, Georgia, just south of where the Georgia werewolf attack happened. It says, my son was in the kitchen eating, looking out the window in the back of our home when he said he saw a long-armed, big figure, but it wasn't a person. He ran into my room. He alerted me on what I had seen. I asked him to point out the direction where he saw it. By that time, there wasn't anything there. It had a long arm, was black and tall, and it wasn't a man or a bear. Okay, this happened around 5:30 p.m. at night, and they said that the leaves are on the ground, and so you could see pretty well. And so David Baraka took this sighting. I believe David Baraka is the gentleman who owns the Expedition Bigfoot, Georgia Bigfoot Museum up in Cherry Log, if I'm not mistaken. So it tells you about him. If you guys want to see these reports, y'all can go to the BFRO website. Okay, so there's that one. That's in Rockmart, North Paulding. Okay. Okay, let's see. Actually, Rockmart is actually in Polk County, y'all. Okay, so it's not even in Paulding County, but it says Paulding here. Okay, here's another one in the Timberland subdivision at Pickett's Mill, Civil War Park. Now, if you guys have been watching my show for a while, you guys are going to know that I have mentioned on several occasions taking my son to Pickett's Mill battlefield for an actual storytelling expedition kind of thing. It was like a haunted woods storytelling night, and we were the last group to go in, and they had people that were dressed up like Civil War reenactors, but they were zombies and ghosts, and it was actually kind of scary. And when we got there, it was all fun and games until we started walking to the car that night. Like I said, we were the last ones to go out there into the Pickett's Mill battlefield, and as my son and I were walking back to the truck, we started hearing cannons firing, and they were not firing cannons that night. Okay, even the ground shook and everything. So this place is highly energized, highly charged from the Civil War battle that happened there. Multiple battles happened there. So it says this was, let's see, what was the date on here? August 3rd, 2012. It says last night around 1:45 a.m., this person was not sleeping well at all. They had some indigestion, went downstairs to go get some antacids, watched TV around 2 o'clock in the morning. A very loud scream or roar sounded out that startled me out of the sofa. It lasted 3 to 4 seconds. The sound had a deep-chested sound like something large. I listened and heard no other noise, no other animals, no thumping, no running, nothing but silence. It did not sound like a person, did not sound like a dog growling, and it did not sound like a coyote or a feline. I approached the front window, looked out through the blinds. Whatever it was sounded close. I would guess it was less than 30 feet from the front porch. The porch light was on, as was the street light. I live in a populated city neighborhood with multiple houses around me. Nobody else has come forward to say they heard the same location as Dallas, but bordering Ackworth. So that's North Paulding as well. Okay, so interesting account right there. I'll kind of setting the stage, like I said, for some of these werewolf sightings that we've had out here in Paulding. Okay, there's another account from 2012 or 2011, February, and this is Old Cartersville Road, Highway 61. Now, this is actually right down the road, not too far from the Etowah Indian Mounds. Okay, and so this was back in 2011, 2015. Sorry, 2000. No, it was 2011. Okay, but they didn't give this report till 2015. I was driving down Old Cartersville Road towards Highway 61, past the chicken farm, had my 13-year-old son with me. I saw what I thought was a bear crouched down by the right side of the road. I turned to tell my son to look at the bear. My son was in the back seat. Before I could turn back around all the way, I noticed it stood up on two legs. My son was asking what it was. Then I noticed it was over 7 foot 6 inches tall, covered in long black hair. It was burly. It was all of 500 to 600 pounds. It was no more than 20 to 30 yards outside our truck window. It was so large, I could see its muscles on its hind legs or on its thighs. Its head appeared to sit on its shoulders like it had no neck. The head looked like it came to a point. It looked like a bipedal ape. It had something white in its hand. That's when it registered it had hands and not claws. The arms were longer than any human arms. They seemed to stretch closer to the knee area. When it walked, the knees worked perfectly. It did not have a bow-legged effect, which made it seem human, but then it looked like an ape. It started to move towards the road, walking on 2 legs. My light stayed on it. It seemed to want out of my light. When it walked towards the road, it was headed on the path to my truck. It was a small curve, so my lights followed it. I hit my fog lights and turned back in the direction it came. It was picked up speed, and it started to run still on 2 legs. I could see the front falls and the thigh muscles bounce. I saw butt muscles flex under the hair. It started moving so fast, the white thing in its hand was almost a blur. The next day, I returned to the area where it ran off in the woods, was uphill. I thought it was flat as fast as it was moving. The house close by had chicken coops with white and brown chickens in it. Okay, so obviously it was taking chickens from the chicken coop in this case. Okay, so that was an ape. Probably, we're going to say that's probably a Bigfoot. Okay, but that is up in North Paulding, okay, where we are going to be going into these reports about the werewolves up there. Okay, so this was from 2011, another 2011 sighting, okay? And this is in Dallas, Georgia, which is right there, middle of Paulding County. And this is from, I think they said this is an Army veteran or a military veteran. This one's kind of long, okay? Let's see. So it was it was roughly around August 2011. Their mother's house located at Burnt Hickory area, Paulding County. Now that's in North Paulding as well, y'all. She lives in a subdivision, but it's still out in the country. This person had always been a night owl. They stepped down on the back deck around 2 a.m. to have a cigarette. Behind her house was nothing but trees, shrubs, hills, and creeks. There was an abundance of wildlife in the area that ranged from deer to coyotes. I was a reconnaissance Marine for 8 years with multiple deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been to numerous survival schools all over America, from Maine to California. Most of my life was spent in the woods, and I understand what animals make those sounds. Most of my life was spent in the woods, and I was on the back deck smoking when I heard this howl scream. It grabbed my attention immediately. I'd only heard it one time. I was unsure what it was, so I listened more, and they thought it was a coyote because the howl was so deep. And then he started to think about his surroundings. There was a highway a couple of miles away. Thought it could have been a big rig or a semi. And then he heard it again. The option was completely ruled out. Started thinking about what else it could be. Maybe it was a generator running. Then he heard another howl. Not a generator. I had run through so many different scenarios and I was starting to get freaked out. The howl was from a living creature and it was much larger than I. Each howl lasted 5 seconds with 10 to 15 seconds of rest between the next. Stood there about 5 minutes before listening to this before I was freaked out, headed inside. I immediately ran to my computer and Googled howling sounds in Paulding County, Georgia. There were several websites regarding howling in the area, but most of them were referring to Pickett's Mill Battlefield. Then I came across BFRO. Initially, I was like, yeah, okay. Started looking through the website. I came across some of the audio submissions from Ohio, and then I nearly crapped my pants. Oh my God. The howl was a T of what I heard. The only difference of mine sounded much deeper, closer. I didn't have dogs barking in the background. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. And I read through some of the other posts of Paulding, and it seemed pretty freaky. And so, okay, so that's pretty cool. So that is a Marine vet right there out of Paulding County over in North Paulding near Burnt Hickory, who had that encounter in 2011. So we got 2015, 2012, 2011, 2011, and 2007. We have another one here. This is in New Georgia, Union Community. Okay, so this is actually in the, I want to say this is more southern, South Paulding. As we were coming home from church around 9:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night, we were headed down Highway 101. We were driving slower than usual. It was dark. There wasn't a lot of traffic. They didn't want to hit a deer, y'all. I have seen cars hit so many deers on those roads, by the way. We slowed down more because we thought it was a deer. Oh, they said they were approaching a curve. They spotted movement on the right side of the road. They slowed down, thought it was a deer. As it got closer, they got closer. It decided to cross the road. It was, let's see, it was so big it seemed like a bear, but it looked closer like it was only on two legs instead of four. It was so tall, it seemed to walk on hunched. It was hunched over and dragged its arms. They thought they were seeing things. We got chills. They passed the old swamp clearing at Paulding County and realized they had heard tales of Bigfoot in the area. And they know 100% that we saw him, is what they said. You know, it was the biggest, wildest creature they'd ever seen. And it just disappeared in the blink of an eye. So there's that encounter right there, y'all. And that's a motorist. A lot of people called in. Listen, you guys would be surprised at all the calls that our sheriff's department got over the years about lions. Okay, lions. So think about how dogmen are described with manes, right? Like a lion's mane. And so, yeah, I'm sorry I'm not pulling up comments, y'all. I can't see the screen right now. So, okay, so this is another one. This is in Paulding County, Highway 92, going through Hiram, Georgia. If you guys are familiar with Hiram, I believe this is the one that I have. Yeah, this is the one that I've remote viewed. Okay, this is one of those that I remote viewed. This report was taken by the head of my Bigfoot research team. Okay, this is in 2006. And this is y'all, this is not even as the crow flies, I'm going to say it's about 1 mile to 2 miles from my farm where I grew up. Okay, it says Highway 92, close to Hiram at Ridge Road. Okay, people from Paulding will know exactly where this is. Think of the Kroger. Okay, turn at the light, go a few miles past the baseball field on the right, and there's a subdivision. Let's see. People said, I've lived here for a decade. I've always kept the dogs. Oh, sorry, that's also. Let me just read this. Okay, here we go. So maybe this is not the one. Okay, this might be another one, actually. This might not be the one that I have remote viewed. Hold on, y'all. I'm sorry. That's a long one. This is not the one that I remote viewed. Or yeah, maybe it is. Okay, sorry, y'all. Okay, so the person's dogs were barking. Let me kind of put this in a nutshell. So their dogs were barking. The dogs don't normally bark late at night like that. It was around 1:30 in the morning. And so the person stepped on their backyard in their underwear, yelled at the dogs, and they said it was very different from all the countless times that he had quieted his dogs in the past. He said, all right, y'all, chill out. People are sleeping. And before he finished the sentence, I heard footsteps, not a four-legged variety, but one very methodically after the other. This got my full attention. I have a storage shed in the back corner of my yard. The first thought was somebody must be trying to break into it. It sits in the very back corner of the fence. Could be accessed by hopping over a 4-foot chain link fence. I went back inside to grab a flashlight and my 9mm. But as I went to the door, I heard a sort of scream and shriek. It was loud enough, actually made me jump a bit, thinking it was teenagers at this point. Likely shouting some sort of insult, but there was something unnerving about the way it carried into my home. Told my girlfriend, who was sitting back, was stirring back to being awake. There was somebody walking in the woods making weird noises. She needed to come here for herself. I'm going to run them off. And he shouted, whoever you are, I'm going to let the dogs out, so you better speak out. And but the footfalls were obviously close to the fence line, were very sounding. I went over to the gate, and the dogs would not leave the yard or my side. This is the first time ever I've witnessed them refuse a chance to run in the woods. At this point, I was a bit angry and embarrassed that I had made a threat to the intruder, and the dogs just stayed put. This is when my whole world was tilted on its ear. I shouted, "I am about to come out there and find you, and when I do, I'm going to shoot you." Figuring this would make whoever it was haul their ASS out of there. As I yelled, this thing went from one end of my yard around the corner of the fence up to the front of my yard, less than 15 seconds, with a very distinct two-leg sound, very heavy. In broad daylight, I could not duplicate the sound, and there are obstacles everywhere, so it wouldn't have been easy, I guess, to get it. So this guy was naked, well, almost naked. He was in his underwear, and barefoot. And so he chambered around and fired 3 shots in the ground, with the 4th being a misfire that he quickly cleared. And at that moment, something started shrieking and howling at extremely high decibel levels and was coming closer, not running away, but running towards the side of the front of the house where I was standing. My girlfriend was up on the side porch and was asking, "What the hell is that?" And even though I was between her and the woods, she said she was going back in the house. And normally when an animal is in the woods, I can trick it into looking into the flashlight by making a high-pitched noise or whistle so you could look at it. But this time, this thing never revealed its eyes to me. I found it very unusual. And let's see, he was physically shaking because this thing was howling, wailing, and screaming. And at the tree line right by his fence, he says, "I'm 6'4", 290 pounds. I'm not fat." So my friends often joke that I am a shaved Sasquatch, is what he said. Oh my God. I like to meet this fella. And he's 41 years old at the time. He's worked as a bouncer and a babysitter in bars, he says, of the nicest type, and all the way down to bar hellholes, let's just say. And he's not easy to intimidate, but whatever was moving out there was much bigger than him, much faster. And I moved up to the side porch. He was freaking out, says he'd be lying if I said otherwise. He was badly shaken. And so it just chilled his blood. So it didn't stop there, y'all. There seemed to be heavy timber being smacked and knocked together out in the woods in succession of 3 whumps. I don't know, it kind of sounds, he said a howl, so it kind of sounds honestly like a Bigfoot out there. So let's see. Anything but that howl again. He was hoping that it was like kids or somebody that was just playing a joke on him, but it wasn't. And he said, I mean, he sat there for a while trying to figure out what this thing was. Let's just say, I believe, this is a lot to go over, y'all, so I'm just going to say it probably was a Bigfoot. Could have been a Dogman, probably was a Bigfoot, but it was something that was knocking sticks together and things like that. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So that was a Marine vet. Oh, that's the one we already did right there. Okay. I think that's the one that we already did. Yeah. Okay, so remember Ridge Road, y'all, because that's where that one was. Okay, just then, because that's not the one that I remote viewed. There's another one. Okay, at that same area that I did do a remote viewing on. Okay, so this is another one in Hiram on Baker's Bridge Road. And so this is all about something that was in the wood line. It was howling. June 2006, early part of the month, arrived home from work, parked the vehicle at the end of the driveway, the wood line, took 5 steps towards the house, heard a howl or an ape grunt. And all right, to save you guys, I know this is a lot reading all these reports here. Y'all can go to the BFRO website and look these up yourselves, okay, if you would like. But they just heard, they figured it was a Bigfoot. Okay, so that was taken by Morris. By the way, Morris Collins is one of my buddies too. I've been Bigfooting with him before. I think he was on the first Bigfoot expedition that I ever had. Okay, so there's that. Let's see. Okay, that's the same one. Let's go down. We got 2 more. Okay, one more nighttime one in 2006. This is in Hiram, Austin Bridge Road. Y'all got to see, these are the same roads. Okay, same areas, right off Ridge Road, Austin Bridge Road in Paulding County. And it says, we live about a mile from Austin Bridge Road. We believe it may have been whatever was seen with the other report. We were headed out to Hiram for dinner in our Suburban. We were headed towards Ridge Road on Austin Bridge. Near where Austin Bridge intersects with Mean Mitchell, we saw what we could describe as an animal with the basic body structure of a bear, but standing on its hind legs and face that seemed more wolfish than anything else. It had to be about 9 feet tall. This is the one that I've remote viewed, y'all. It stood on the road. It was 200 yards from, at about 200 yards, we decided to pull the vehicle out around and go a different direction rather than drive any closer. It was the witness, his wife, and their children. It was perfect weather, mid-evening, and this was an investigation followed up by the head of my research team, Mr. Lee himself. And I want to read what Lee said to the audience. He said, I spoke with a witness who was with his wife and children, witnessed the animal standing in the middle of Mean Mitchell Road near Austin Bridge. The witness has a military background and is a trained observer. His account was very credible and rich in detail. The family was driving towards Ridge Road. The witness had intended to take the other road when the creature was encountered. He then decided to change his route. The duration of the observation lasted for about 2 minutes. The animal was described as being 9 to 10 feet tall, human-like, barrel-chested, lean, and tall. The shoulders were described as being not very broad, and there was not much of a neck. The hair color could not be discerned and was described as being dark, with the length being about 3 to 4 inches long. The key feature that impressed the witness was the animal's facial features. The witness described the face as being lupine or wolfish. A wolf head with a small snout. The witness stated that the eyes glowed red, as if the illumination came from within the eye rather than the reflection coming from the headlights of the vehicle. This occurred very close in time and location as BFR report 14887. There have been reports of animals being killed in that area, coinciding with these sightings, which may or may not be a coincidence. All right, y'all. So that is one of the remote viewing targets for tonight is from that report right there. And so I just wanted to give you guys a buildup of all the different sightings that happened there in this area. We've got one more that we'll go over before we get into the remote viewing data for this and into some of the sheriff's department and my father's encounter. Actually, shout out to my dad if you're watching tonight again. Okay, so this is in 2004 spring on Highway 61. Y'all heard that before. At Burnt Hickory, y'all, same area. So we got South Paulding and North Paulding. This is North Paulding. Burnt Hickory. Behind my house in the 125-acre wood area behind my, 125-acre woods behind my pasture that was 4 acres, standing at the left of the barn is this location in Dallas, Georgia. I lived in Burnt Hickory Estates off Highway 61 in a 2-story house with my mother, sister, stepfather. We have over 125 acres. Backyard's nothing but woods. It says they're covered in trees and little creeks. Me and my friends always played in the woods. For years, we would find crazy things out there that just didn't make sense, like trees bent over. I remember a big hole about 20 feet deep, 40 feet wide around. We called it the hole. I hope it wasn't Mel's hole, but it was just the hole. They decided to transport our horses behind our house and cut down about 4 acres of trees. Put a barn back there. About 5 months later, after everything was built and finished, they get bored and go in the pasture and hang out with the horses, feeding them and just hanging out. Excuse me, y'all. Okay. Excuse me, y'all. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. I think this is a Bigfoot in the pasture. I'm not going to keep going with that one. Hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. I did not mean to cough in the microphone like that. But, okay, let's just say that was probably a Bigfoot. Another North Paulding Bigfoot. Hold on, y'all. All right, I got a frog in my throat. The 4th of July frog. All right, so report after report of the North Paulding cryptids and South Paulding cryptids. Okay, that second to last report is one of them that I did remote view for the show tonight. This is one that we're going to go over. I remote viewed it a while back, but we're going to talk about it tonight. Okay, and let me repeat. I didn't go over these before because I didn't want people to know where I would live. Okay, I don't live there anymore. So, okay. I also wanted to go over what is up in North Paulding as well. Not only do we have these werewolf sightings and Bigfoot reports, but we have something called the okay, this is where a lot of these reports come. It's from High Shoals area. Okay, the High Shoals area, the High Shoals waterfall So this is about 10 minutes away from the Etowah Indian Mounds. And there's a cemetery here. I've been there. I met some wonderful women that we went to the Etowah Indian Mounds together. And we went to this waterfall. I took them there because this is where we have these werewolf sightings. Okay, the Dogman sightings. I have a cousin who lives over here, by the way. But there is a cemetery there, right there by the waterfall. It's actually a hike down. You hike past the cemetery to get to the waterfall. So it's beautiful out there. It's actually that's actually pretty tall. You can't tell by just looking at it through that picture. But if someone were to stand at the bottom, it's a pretty big waterfall. All right. Now, I also mentioned that the mascot for the high school up there, the North Paulding High School, is none other than the Wolf Pack, y'all. Okay, the Wolf Pack. And so we don't have wolves that I know of in Paulding County, but we do have werewolves. So it makes you wonder, right? Somebody know something? I think so, maybe. So let's see. I kind of wanted to say hello to everybody in the chat, y'all. I want to say hello because I feel like I've ignored the chat this entire show because I've had my screen pulled up. And so thank you, Kent, for that super sticker. Hi, Jessica. I love werewolf stories. So do I, except for when they're a mile from my house. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I love werewolf stories as well, and Dogman stories. And tonight, like I said, we're putting Paulding County on the map when it comes to werewolf and Dogman encounters out there. So shout out to everybody in the chat, y'all. I'm going to try to be better about pulling up your comments tonight now that I have stopped sharing my screen. Okay, but like I said, the Etowah Indian Mounds. Now, I don't know if there is a connection to the Etowah Indian Mounds and these werewolf sightings and these Bigfoot sightings that are out there in that northern part of the county, but they are in Cartersville, which is I can't remember which exact county Cartersville is in, but it is directly above Paulding County, that red county right there. And I'm going to say Etowah Indian Mounds are about 10 miles from where these sightings are, 10 to 15 miles at the most from where all those sightings are. Okay, at the werewolves and the Dogmen in Paulding. Okay, and if you are not familiar with the Etowah Indian Mounds, I highly recommend everyone going there and visiting the Etowah Mounds historical site. This place was massive. Okay, massive. When I went there, the first thing that I heard when I got out of my vehicle was giants. I just heard the word giants in my head. So, so this is what it looked like back in the day. Okay, that's what it's supposed to look like. And this is a model of what it looked like a long time ago. Okay, and this is a drawing of it. I mean, those look like pyramids. Okay, look like pyramids to me, but nonetheless, we do hear about Dogman sightings being around cemeteries. We hear about Dogman sightings being around graveyards, and there's all that right there. Okay, all that right there. It's being in such close proximity to these werewolf and Dogman and Bigfoot sightings in Paulding. There could be a connection. Absolutely could. But also, we talk about, and I wish Dennis was here. I don't know why he hasn't shown up. That's okay. That's okay, Dennis. The battlefields. Okay, we have a very rich history of Civil War battles and Civil War history in Paulding County. And I have discussed this on my show before, even about my family, our family's home in downtown Dallas, actually. I don't know if I ever told y'all where it was, but it's down there in downtown Dallas by the square. And our family's home was actually one of the only structures that was not burned down in Sherman's march to, when he went on his burning rampage to get rid of all that old world architecture and stuff, right? So this is for entertainment purposes only, of course, but our house was one of the only houses. My great grandparents' home is where I think the generals stayed there. Okay, the Union generals. They used that as a headquarters actually, while they were plotting and planning their scheme with the Pigot's Mill battle and all these other, and the Kennesaw battles as well at Kennesaw National Park, which we know that as that today. But nonetheless, lots of bloodshed. Okay, y'all, lots of bloodshed in the area. Lots of cemeteries and Indian Indian mouse, earthen mouse, I guess you could call them as well. Okay, well, let's get to, I'm talking so much because I don't have a co-host tonight that my voice is getting all froggy. Okay, let me talk to you guys about some of the sightings. I'm going to have to pull up my phone because I've got some messages here, and I'm going to tell you. Okay, so this is not one that's on this list. So not everybody reports their sightings to the BFRO or to the North American Dogman Project or whoever. Okay, a lot of people just don't want to be bothered by it. Okay, and also there are a lot of people like myself who see something, and we still can't put our finger on it, like what it is. Like, what did I see? Did I really see an African-style hyena-type dogman leaving Alabama? I still don't know for sure. I'm still trying to figure out what I saw. Okay, and so these people that have made some of these reports to, calling into 911 centers, for instance, they're not exactly sure what they saw. But this is what they reported. And then we have deputies who have backed it up and said they believe they saw this. Okay, so one of these reports here, let me just go over one. There was an accident down in South Paulding. Now, I'm going to say it was near that Ridge Road area that we've had at least 2 or 3 reports that I read y'all tonight. There was a couple who said that they hit a werewolf. This is what they said. They hit a werewolf, and there was a big dent in their car. They told the officers when the officers got there, they said that they had hit a dog. They thought they'd hit a wolf or a large dog. And when they said before the officer got there, they said they hit it, and they thought they'd hit a dog until it got up and it ran off on 2 legs. And when the officer got there, he said there was absolutely a big dent in their car, and they had definitely hit something, and they believed they had hit a werewolf. Okay, so keep that in mind. Oh man, I'm putting Paulding on blast tonight. I'm definitely putting Paulding on blast. All right, so I had mentioned when I was telling my father about my possible dogman sighting leaving Alabama, he was convinced that what I saw was an alpha coyote. Okay, an alpha coyote, y'all. And I was like, well, it could be. I don't even know. He just said an alpha coyote is something that's larger than a coyote. It has like a lion's mane, kind of like a big, this is how he described it to me. It has like a lion's mane, a big like tuft of fur around its, going down its neck, its back. And they're just really big. That's what he told me. And so he told me about the time. Now, this is the same time that all these people are having these werewolf sightings in the same area by my farm. Same exact time my dad was living there at the time in our house on the farm. He told me, I wrote this down, around 2000, it was around 2004. Okay. Now, those werewolf sightings or the wolf sightings were around 2006, right? And beyond. Well, this is in 2004. He said that he walked in his garage. He opened the door to his garage, and this gigantic black, what he called, the only way he could describe it was an alpha coyote, was eating the dog food for his, he had, what was Cruiser? Oh God, I can't remember the name of the type of dog he was. He's like the big black and brown dogs. I don't know why I'm having a brain fart. He was bigger than me. His dog was gigantic. Okay, not a Doberman, Rottweiler. He's a Rottweiler. And I'm talking about the biggest Rottweiler you've ever seen. My dad fed him steaks for dinner every night. Okay, he ate better than my dad. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Unreal. I appreciate y'all. Yes, Brian. Everybody, it's Rottweiler. That dog ate better than I ate, and my kid, my sister, my brother. I'm just kidding. My dad fed us too, y'all. He fed us really good. He fed us great. But yeah, what are y'all eating tonight? I see Summer's eating lasagna. But the dog ate good. I know if my dad's watching, he's laughing right now. So the dog ate really good. But he had a bag of dry dog food in the garage. And he said when he opened up the door of the garage, this gigantic dog, he said it had to have been like almost 200 pounds. He said it was about 200 pounds is what he told me. Bigger than Cruiser, which is my dog's name, his dog's name. And he said that it took off running out the door. Like it kind of scared the thing, whatever it was, and it took off running. And he got a pretty good look at it. And he said it was just like this gigantic, what he called was an all black coyote with like a lion's mane on it, is what he said. And I think it took him a while to wrap his head around what it was. He didn't really think too much about it. You know, he's not the kind of guy that sits around pondering on stuff like that. He doesn't care. Okay. Just be honest. Okay. My dad's like, whatever. He's seen weird stuff. And so it wasn't until like a day or two later, he was up at Polly's. Okay. Polly's is where they have chicken fingers and tater logs. Okay. And it's where they have chicken fingers and tater logs. Y'all heard about those. And one of his neighbors actually said, hey, have you seen what somebody hit on the side of the road, down the road? You need to go look at it. And he said it's this gigantic dog had been hit, or a wolf. I think he called it a wolf. And so my dad was curious. So when he was leaving Polly's, okay, our chicken finger and tater log mecca over there in the middle of, it's not called that anymore though. Don't go looking for it, y'all. It's not there anymore. But he got in his truck and he went down the road, and sure enough, on the road leading to his house, our farm, there was this gigantic black dog. He said it was so big, people had pulled over to take pictures of it and look at it. And he still didn't know what it was. He still just assumed it was like that gigantic coyote that he had seen. And I asked him, I was like, well, did you take pictures? And he goes, no, those were the days where we only had disposable cameras. It's like, why didn't you go to the store and get a disposable and take some pictures, but this was before I was ever Bigfooting. I wouldn't have thought to take pictures of it either. I asked him if it had hands, like human hands or raccoon hands. And he said that he does not remember. He would not have even thought to look. Okay. But it was so big that people had pulled over to look at it. Okay. And so he said that he just drove past it and thought, man, that's that coyote. That's that thing that was in my garage. Okay. And so now, like, fast forwarding all these years later, okay, that was around 2004. Today, 2025, here we are talking about all the werewolves of Paulding County. And I do believe my dad did have one probably in his garage, probably Dogman, y'all, in his garage eating dry dog food for a cruiser. Okay, cruiser dog food. But he was telling me, my dad was actually telling me, he's like, their favorite food, right, are dogs and cats. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Werewolves are eating the cats, y'all, is what he said. And then he told me they taste good. Not my dad knows, but he said that that's why they eat them, because they eat that good dog food and that good dry cat food, and it makes them taste better, is what he was telling me. So thank you for the tidbit of information to my dad, y'all. I'm just passing it along to my audience tonight. If you're ever wondering why the Dogmen and the Bigfoots may try to eat our pets sometimes, because my dad says the dried food makes our animals taste good. That's what he said. Okay. But anyways, yep. Okay. So those are some of the reports right there. Those are some of the reports. And yes, I have remote viewed these things. And hold on one moment, y'all. I believe Dennis said that he is in the studio, but I do not see him in here anywhere. So I may have given him the wrong link. So I'm going to maybe pull up a picture or something and try to get Dennis in here, y'all. Okay. And maybe look at some of these comments. Yes. Oh, Dennis is in the chat. Okay. So Dennis is in here. Dennis, I'm going to try to pull you up. Hold on one second. I think you may have the wrong link. I think that may be what the problem is. You may be in the wrong studio, because I don't see you in here. Okay. You're not in the studio right now. And I can't wait to pull you up. Hear what you have to say about all this stuff. I just sent it to your text. There he is. He's in here. I know that was kind of gross, y'all. I'm sorry talking about eating cats and dogs, but that's, we got to talk about this. We're talking about cryptids. We're talking about Dogman sightings and werewolves and all that kind of stuff. A lot of pets go missing wherever they have, Dogman sightings and Bigfoot sightings. Okay, here, let me get Dennis up here, y'all. He's here. And stuff. A lot of pets go missing wherever they have. Dennis, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, Dennis.
How
are you tonight?
Abducted me.
It's good to see you, Dennis.
I've been sitting in the back room watching all this, and he wouldn't let me in. We got screwed up with StreamYard tonight. I got the wrong link or something. I don't know what happened.
Oh no! Yeah, I may have sent you the wrong link. That happens sometimes. It definitely happens sometimes. It does. Well, how have you been, Dennis? Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, I've been reading all your the reports and stuff you've been putting up and all that. So,
what do you think about that? All the werewolf and dogman sightings in Paulding County. Is that normal to you? It doesn't seem normal to me, right? Having that many encounters in one county. I don't know. And being so in such close proximity also to where the Georgia werewolf attack was up in Rome, Georgia, Floyd County. Some of these sightings, I mean, they're not but an hour away from each other, actually. Okay, so and on my farm. So
well, this definitely sounds like typical werewolf stuff going on. Absolutely. I mean, all these sightings and all that. And somebody brought something up in the chat that's very important. They're hanging out a lot in cemeteries and graveyards, and that's typical werewolf activity as well.
Yeah, that is. They love hanging out in cemeteries. Okay, anywhere where you got small pets, cemeteries, and burial mounds as well, like the Etowah Indian mounds. Actually, that's and waterfalls. A lot of water sources as well. A lot of the sightings do they're kind of hanging around like the High Shoals area up in North Paulding, where people are having these reports. Now, like I said, not all the reports are on BFRO's website. That's a Bigfoot website. Okay, it's a Bigfoot group, so they're not going to have all these dogman and werewolf sightings on there, but they do have several. Okay, because people call it, they don't know if they've seen a Bigfoot or a werewolf. There's a lot of cross identification, I guess you could call it, with some of these things. They just know they saw something big and hairy, and it scared the pants off of them. According to that one guy, he said it scared his, I forgot what he said. It was something like he scared his pants off. He didn't have pants on anyways, I don't think. But anyways,
that's true. You do have to wonder sometimes if there's not some misidentification going on here, and they're actually seeing dogmen instead of werewolves. Sometimes you have to wonder about that. But I said nobody walks up and asks for a card. Can you prove you're a werewolf? Can you prove you're a dogman? Kind of thing. But what we've talked about in the past, Jessica, and we remind everybody out there about it. Usually if you run into a werewolf, it's the last thing that ever happens to you most of the time. If you actually get that close to one. Now I'm not talking about sighting one from a distance. I'm talking about actually, kind of walking up in the vicinity of one. Usually they're going to unalive you in a hurry. That's just the way they work. Dogman, on the other hand, usually he will cut you a break sometimes. You walk away from that, there's not a whole lot. Here's what I go with, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but you got so many reports, more so than dogmen attacking people,
Yeah. Well, none of these reports of these dogmen or werewolves attacked anybody down here in Paulding, though. Nobody was ever hurt. Okay. I think that one of the reports said that if they saw whatever was holding something, it was a chicken, I think. So they make use of all the resources there. I can't blame them for that, wanting to make use of the livestock they've got in the area and things like that. And there's an abundance of livestock and small animals and things around South Paulding, for sure. Actually, our family's farm was like 250 acres or something like that. And it was just a lot of land, a huge lake on there and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was just a perfect place. If I had to guess, some of them were probably living out in the swamp behind the dam at our house. I mean, we had hundreds of acres back there of just swampland that most people didn't even know about if we didn't tell them. Okay. Because it was very private.
Well,
so it's a good place to hide.
That's a big hangout. That's a big hangout for Dogman. He likes swamps too. They like swampy areas and stuff like that. That's another plus for them. And it wouldn't surprise me that Dogman doesn't get a chicken once in a while, chicken or two. I mean, he's got to live too. He's got to eat. A lot of things. We have I'm gonna tell you what. If I'm out in the field investigating, and I hear of a farm or someplace like that that's starting to lose a little livestock, that's exactly where I want to go investigate and hang around in that area, because that's a good telltale sign that you got some kind of werewolf, dogman type activity going on there, And that's definitely, as an investigator, you kind of you always want to go to the hot spots, to look for these things.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that if anybody wants to go to a hot spot, they can go to the northwest corner of Georgia. Okay, to not only find Bigfoots but also werewolves and dogmen as well. We've had plenty of sightings and reports from up there, and so I just think it's cool that even my dad, of all people, has potentially had a dogman in his garage. Okay, potentially. Now, I don't know. Have you heard of the alpha coyote before, Dennis? Like, what do you think about people? I mean, it could be an alpha coyote. Maybe these are not even dogmen. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about alpha coyotes. Do you?
Well, there's a lot of correlation with that, Jessica. It's a good point you bring up there. A lot of people speculate that they kind of maybe go with the migration of coyotes. They may follow them or work in conjunction with them in some ways, because you got to remember these things. They got to have something to eat. I mean, and something as big as they are, it takes a lot of food to sustain something like that, And it makes sense that they would probably follow coyote migrations and even wolf migrations. They would hang out with something like that because that's where the game is,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Unreal Estate Agent 007. You were mentioning about the clean water up there in the springs. That's actually, we go and I mentioned the other night that we take like jugs and stuff. We go get fresh water out of the mountain spring. Okay, sometimes it's not too far from this area actually where we do that. So the water is pure, it's beautiful, it's fresh. There's no chemicals in it. And so I highly recommend doing that. And so, but they do have fresh water up there. That's a great place with the resources, the good water for these cryptids to be living up there. And let's see. So I'm assuming you're from Paulding or that area. Okay. It says, what I saw was not threatening as far as movement or posture, body language. It walked relaxingly and comfortably, and bone structure like people, the mouth hanging open was terrifying. Okay. Well, that does sound terrifying. Anything with its mouth wide open is terrifying. As long as the mouth is not headed your way, though. Okay. It's going to eat you. Wow. Okay. Oh, and anti-venom. I believe anti-venom is actually, oh yeah, blue's important too. Anti-venom says Douglasville has a legend of Pigman on Jaeger Road. Oh, I have to look into that because that's right there by Paulding, actually. A man owned large cats and other zoo animals there. He invented the method of darting animals to sedate them. That is really cool. Thank you for that tidbit of information. And actually, I used to go to Pigman's out when I was a kid. Okay, which is not too far from there as well. I used to go look for Pigman late at night with my friends and go get chased out of the woods. So I don't know if that's the same Pigman. Could be. So, okay.
I'm kind of formulated theory, Jessica, since you bring that up. Pigman may be something very much like an elemental sometimes. Very much like, Goatman, I think, is sort of also falls into elemental group sometimes. That's very strange stuff.
It is very strange. Very strange. Well, people are describing these things as werewolves, Dennis, but I think that they're dogmen. Okay, they sound more like dogmen, especially the one that my dad encountered in his garage eating the dog food that day. It could be, the alpha coyote, but I'm thinking these things are not actual werewolves. But I mean that comes into question, like, are people just getting them confused? And it just seems like that's the only way they know how to describe what they're seeing as a werewolf. Okay, maybe they just don't know what a dogman is. They've never heard of it. But I think there is a distinction. I think what these reports are describing, being 9 to 10 feet tall, Dennis, I don't think a person would shapeshift into a 9 to 10 foot tall werewolf, but could they?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the thing about the werewolf, you got to remember this, and we talked about this many times. We've done a lot of shows on this in the past. It is a demonic entity. I mean, that's where it's getting its power. It's a dark power. And usually when they manifest into this, they're up to no good. They're not just walking around smelling the daisies out there, They're actually up to something dark and evil, and a lot of times, and we talked about this before, werewolves are brought forth as assassins to the unalive people, your enemies. You might want to get rid of. You definitely stick a werewolf on them. You got somebody that's going to take care of business.
Oh yeah, Oh yeah. Well, there seems to be a nice population of them in this region right here. Of I'm going to say dogmen. I'm just going to say replace werewolf with dogman. Okay, on a lot of these encounters, but there is remote viewing data because I was tasked with 2 targets on 2 separate occasions. Of first was the North Paulding Werewolf was the first one, and the second one was from that encounter that the head of my Bigfoot team took back in 2006, June the 16th of 2006, on Osterbridge Road in Paulding County. I was tasked that as a remote viewing target a little while back, and so I guess we can go over the data for that. Okay, for these targets. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So let's go over the data, Dennis.
Sure.
How about that? Because I think I've done a pretty good job of going over all these encounters so far tonight. Okay, let's do the werewolf sighting first of 2006, right down the road from my farm. Okay, that the head of my Bigfoot research team took back in 2006. This is the one where they said that it was they were driving into Hiram, Georgia. Okay, they're driving into Hiram to go to dinner in their Suburban. It was a man, his wife, and their kids in the car. And they were driving down the road, and they saw this gigantic thing. They thought it was a bear. Stood up. It was like 9 to 10 feet tall, they said, which is absolutely massive. Dennis, this is absolutely massive. And they said that it was so odd that they ended up turning around so they didn't have to drive past it. Okay, and I don't blame them one bit. But 10 feet tall, that is gigantic, Dennis. Don't you think? That's pretty big for even a dogman.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that report. That's very interesting. And if you were to see something like that, it definitely would, it would scare you pretty bad. I'm sure it would. And you wouldn't want to get as close to something like that as possible. I want to tell you something that big, Jessica, could easily turn over a car. I mean, it wouldn't be any problem. They could knock an automobile over easily, and probably, open it like a can of sardines if they wanted to.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, I mean, it would be nothing to them to be able to go and rip the doors off the car and all that. But for whatever reason, it didn't charge at them. It didn't try to hurt them or approach them or anything. It was just standing there. So, okay.
Well, that's where it sounds very much to me like a dogman. That sounds very much like dogman activity more so than werewolf.
It does. It does. And we hear about dogmen being quite large, right? But 10 feet tall. I mean, that is huge. And quickly, let me pull up on the screen for the audience to see. These are some of the different types of dogmen. I believe this might have come from the North American Dogman Project, if I'm not mistaken. This chart right here. But these are some of the different types of dogmen out there. And the one that I might have seen looks more like that hyena type down there, down at the bottom. But those are some of the types. So just keep that in mind when we are discussing all these different dogman and werewolf encounters tonight. Okay. Well, let's get into this first target. Okay, because this is
that variant too looks downright evil.
It does. They all
looking. It looks like a hyena. Yeah.
I know. There's none of them that I'd want to. Can I pet that dog? Okay, that's like a meme. This little girl said that trying to pet a bear one day. You don't want to pet those dogs, y'all. Okay, those are not the kind of dogs I'd want to pet. Okay.
No.
So for this target, okay, some of my sensory data as I was remote viewing this, where I'll go down the sensory data first. So we had black, dark, green, growing, scary, giant was in my data, huge, playing, and demented. Demented was in my data. Okay, some of my analytic overlay for this target of this 9 to 10 foot werewolf on the side of the road in South Paulding. Okay, I wrote some of the stuff that I was seeing, I was interpreting. Grass, night, woods. I heard clairaudiently, he is risen. Okay, Holy Ghost, that's what I wrote down. Monsters, I wrote down monsters. I even wrote down exorcism. Okay, so that's interesting because I was getting a whole lot of almost like exorcist monster kind of data. Okay, so I wrote monster exorcism. I heard a mess. some of the other stuff I wrote down: plans and tormented soul. Okay, tormented soul, linear timeline, cursed. Dennis wrote cursed, dementia or demented, and I wrote down trying to forget, forged, supply and demand was in my data as well. Now that's, and I drew a picture of what looks like a highway, okay, or some kind of road, and so I wanted to go back before I go to my stage 4 data. I just wanted to kind of go over this a little bit because I was definitely in the kind of in a wooded area at night. Okay, there were trees around for sure, and I was picking up on something that it was almost religious, is what I was picking up, but it was almost kind of bad. It was like it was something. I felt like there was something evil there. Do you know what I mean? There was like religious. Maybe there was a church in the area. I mean, I don't know. Could be. There's a lot of churches in that area actually, but tormented soul, things like that. I'm wondering if like maybe I was picking up on the family that encountered it. Maybe they felt like they needed an exorcism. I mean, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but there was something that in the curse, maybe they felt like there was a curse, or maybe this was a curse. Maybe that's why that creature was there, because there was a curse either on the land or, it was just cursed. What do you think about that?
That sounds very much like what we've talked about a lot in past. And I've had a lot of conjecture on this. I've talked a lot about this to other people. I've went over a lot of reports and all that. There's, I think, a definite Dogman dark connection thing going on. And I think sometimes some of these things, Jessica, can be conjured forth from the darkness for certain reasons, to go on certain missions, whatever it is. And like I said about the werewolf being the perfect assassin, you would send definitely something out like that to do whatever evil deed you wanted to do. You could also conjure up the Dogman as well, who I think the Dogman, in some instances, I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, could this possibly be a variant of a werewolf, that we don't really know. And here's another thought, since you're connecting this with churches and religion, there may be some twisted individuals out there who may be certain ministers or some people involved in the church that think they are doing God's business by calling something up like this to unalive some what they would consider evil people.
No. I hope not.
We talked about that in the past. You don't use evil to get rid of evil. Usually, it never works out right. It never goes good that way. But that may be what some of this is, especially since you got that feeling about the tie with the church thing.
Yeah.
That's
my gosh, that's wild. Yeah. I mean, listen, anything's possible, but I'd like to think that the good people of Paulding would not do stuff like that. But I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stuff that goes down. So who knows? Who knows? Anything is possible at this point, but yeah, I do. There was something cursed to whatever was going on with this target. Okay, and so.
Well, let me say this, Jessica.
Okay.
Let me say this. And we gotta realize this: there are a lot of people out there walking around who are Christians by day and Luciferians by night. I mean, that's just what you got. You got those kind of people out there who might do something like this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. I think it's so weird because when it hits home and it's like, this is by where I live, you don't want to think that way. Like I don't want my mind to go there. Okay. But you just never know. You never know who your neighbors are, y'all. Never know what your neighbors are doing. I'm just saying. Maureen, thank you so much for that super sticker. She goes, can I pet that dog? So thank you. Don't pet the werewolves. Okay. They're not for petting. All right. Just we'll pet Gus, but not the werewolves. Okay, so let's go to the next page on that note.
What you're picking up on is very much like the hounds of God that we've talked about before, too. That's very interesting, too. This is medieval stuff in a way as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a rich history in that area of, we don't know the true history, honestly, when it goes way back in time. But we do know that Civil War battles happened there. And a lot of rich history with Native American history, definitely there. Actually, my dad still lives in the area, and has very rich Native American history on his land that he lives on at this moment. And it's even had archaeologists and historians come out to his property to come do some archaeological stuff, let's just say, on his property where he lives right now. Because a lot of like old Native American artifacts have been found on his property. So, okay. All right. So here's some of the data. Okay. Here's some more of the data. And thank you again, Maureen, and thank you to Skip as well. Skip, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for that super sticker. I appreciate you. Okay, so on my stage 4 data for this werewolf in South Paulding, I picked up on free fall. I wrote free fall, Judgment Day, and I was actually I drew like a target, and I was seeing and I wrote firing squad and target on your back. Okay, so. Cool. And I wrote free range as well. Free range, firing squad, target on your back, targeted weapons, guns, knives. Like, I mean, I was picking up on like targeted weapons, like an arsenal of weapons in like Judgment Day. So like, it makes me wonder just from some of that data, like, are these things being hunted? Okay. Are they being hunted, or could they be assassins or something? But even though they haven't really hurt anybody that we know of. Okay. Or are people going after these things? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Okay, so let's go on. So I was picking up on like the woods, a country setting. I wrote farmland. Like open land is what I was seeing. And something was uncanny, weird, and there was confusion involved. And I was seeing the moonlight. Okay, I actually wrote down a fog. But those people said, I think in the report, it said that it was a clear night, but it was nighttime. But I was definitely seeing like moonlight. But that was kind of all the data that I had for this target. Okay. And I don't know if it answers questions or not, but it's just really odd because it seems like there's a curse involved with this target, with this werewolf or this dogman, this gigantic dogman. A curse and a lot of a target on its back. Okay. And I got to say, with all these people who have had these encounters, even this area and in the North Paulding area, some of them were military veterans. And one man fired at least 3 rounds into the ground. Okay. When he was having his experience. Now, I don't know. He doesn't know if his was a Bigfoot or a Dogman. It was in the woods behind his house over by the Piggott Mill battlefield. But I would assume that once you see something like that, you're going to be on high alert and probably ready to fire upon any kind of werewolf that comes on your property. I know I probably would be, considering I have kids and a dog, if I lived there, but I don't know. See, because I'm also the Cryptid Huntress, and I don't want to be, I've got a level head about stuff. But imagine the normal everyday person, Dennis, that encounters something like a werewolf, especially a 9 to 10 foot tall werewolf or dogman on their property or in their neighborhood. They're going to be on high alert, and they're going to be ready, especially in Paulding County, to shoot it. Just saying.
Jessica, here's the interesting thing we got to consider, and it's, I'm always fascinated by your remote viewing work. It's fantastic. But let me say this, and I think you may have hit the nail on the head here. Okay, this may be a cursed individual living there around there, and the land itself, having had battles on it and having had such a long history. When blood is spilt on the land, it becomes, it does become sort of a cursed area, that's part of the thing. And whenever you spill blood, like in a battle or a place where people are unalive, it stains the land spiritually in many ways. And it calls forth these things, the connection for these things of darkness. And definitely, if you were a cursed individual with something like this going on, you're going to move from place to place. And wherever you stay for a while, this is going to happen. This is definitely going to happen, whether it's whatever the cycle of the moon may be or whatever the situation. I think you're dealing with these factors in that situation, and that's what you're picking up on with your RV here. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Absolutely. What's up, Scott? Scott's in the chat, says, Paulding Werewolves. Yes. Listen, he said, don't be pigging on the Paulding cops. By the way, shout out to all the Paulding County Sheriff's deputies and everybody that works out there. I've got some friends on the force out there. And actually, I know a lot of people out there. I used to go to church kindergarten with the sheriff out there, as a matter of fact. Okay, so shout out to all y'all out there and to all the dispatchers and everybody. Y'all rock. Okay, and thank you for keeping the streets safe out there, because these streets is crazy, y'all. Streets is crazy these days, as we say. Okay, but anyways, okay, we've got another target to go over tonight. Let's do this other one now. This is just in general the North Paulding Werewolf. Okay, and this target was done more recently. Okay, but this is the North Paulding Werewolf. That was just a general North Paulding Werewolf was the prompt there for this target, and this is one that actually was described as looking like this. Okay, I'm gonna pull up a picture for you guys. Kind of looks like this right here. They say it was gray with glowing red eyes, I believe. Okay, or the majority is kind of a consistent description of the Paulding Werewolf, which is actually the North Paulding Werewolf. And sometimes it's on 4 legs, sometimes it was seen on 2, usually on 2 legs. And just to note, once again, the high school up there, North Paulding, their mascot is the Wolf Pack. Okay, the North Paulding Wolves. Okay, and I don't think we have wolves in Paulding, y'all. I don't, but we do have werewolves. Okay, so let's get to this target. Okay, so some of my sensory data for this target: fluid, flowing, moving, running, old, under, dented, provoked, and honest. That was some of my sensory data. Okay, so with my analytic overlay for this target right here, I actually picked up on what I kept picking up on a lot of distances. Okay, this is weird because I was picking up on distances. So I wrote down like a quarter mile, a half mile radius. I wrote down, so a quarter mile or a half mile radius, runaway, juke. Okay, so this is wild, right? So juke moves. So juke. So y'all know what juke is, like people that play football or any kind of like soccer or any kind of game, like where you're running a ball, you stop dead in your tracks real quick and then you turn the other direction and you throw the people off that are trying to grab you. Okay, it's called a juke move. All right, but I wrote down juke moves, football player, which is crazy because I just showed you guys the North Paulding Wolf. Okay, for their logo. That's why I was showing y'all that, because this is in my data. I wrote football player, teamed up. I actually wrote down the word ancient, old timer. This is for the North Paulding Werewolf. Buried underground, team player. I got a lot of team data, which would indicate to me that there's probably more than one. If there's like a bunch, like a pack of wolves. And what is their high school thing called? They're called the Wolf Pack. Okay, up there. But anyways, I'm just saying. I'm not saying there's a connection, but there could be a connection. All right, and honesty and integrity was a big part of this data as well. And for my drawing that I did for this target, so I drew like, I'll show you right here. It's like a circle, and there's a radius going out. You know, like this is like maybe this is its area. Okay, like maybe this is like there's like an area, like a half mile to a quarter mile radius that this thing lives in. Okay, that's what I think through this data. That is just my interpretation of the data, and you guys might feel the same way, or maybe you have another idea for it. Okay, but that was most of my stages 1 through 3, and then I have stage 4 for the Paulding Werewolf here. Okay, I wrote down bleed through and Native American was on my next page. As part of my analytic overlay, bleed through and Native American, localized, and I was definitely in my environment. It was like mountains, woods, forest, wooded area, trees, lake, pond, and water. Mm-hmm. And guess what I wrote down next, Dennis? Curses and cemetery. Curses, cemetery. And then I drew like a rectangle and I wrote vast open wooded area, like a meadow, floodgates, hidden treasure, and hidden gem. Okay. So this is another separate target, a separate blind target. I'm picking up on curses and cemeteries. Again, a curse and a cemetery. That's no coincidence, Dennis, right?
There again, that sounds very much like werewolf type stuff. Definitely. I mean, you know, the curse thing and all that. we talked about
Yeah.
earlier in the cemeteries, there's always a connection between that places of the dead and the demonic are drawn to these places of the dead. And like battlefields, places like that, wherever there's been trauma, that's where you find these things. And there seems to be some kind of mystical tie to these things to draw them there. I've even had, Jessica, over the years, a ton of reports of Bigfoot hanging out in cemeteries. That's strange.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not that strange because we've heard it too as well. And so there's all sorts of cryptids being probably summoned, blessed, cursed to protect cemeteries and places like that all over the world. Okay, that's my opinion. And so
It very much sounds to me like what you're picking up with the remote viewing here is the fact that this is a cursed individual, and it's also tied into the cursed land itself. And what you're looking at is, definitely something very supernatural type thing going on, definitely with that. And whenever you have those factors involved in something like this, you're talking about something conjured forth usually from the darkness. And we've talked about that before in the past. There is a lot of signs and connections that some of this stuff definitely is conjured up from the darkness for certain purposes that we don't know about. And you got to wonder about that too. But this sounds to me, I mean, just what you're picking up on sounds very much like to me, whether you agree with it or not, is that this is a cursed individual, because you keep coming up with that word curse, and they would definitely be dominated. Their life would be, and they would be slaves to it. So that would be foremost on their minds at all times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm just trying to wrap my head around like what all went on in Paulding to where things would be so cursed to have all these werewolves there. You know what I mean? Or other than like the Civil War going on there, and maybe land disputes and stuff. It makes me wonder. There's the like I said, the history there is so rich. And my family's roots are all up in Paulding County, y'all. That's I'm a Jones. Okay, so if you know Paulding from the old school, you know the Joneses. Okay, I've got a lot of roots there. All my relatives are buried in Paulding County. Okay, for the most part. But anyways, there's just, I guess, the resources, the blood and the land. Okay, you and I talk about blood a lot, Dennis, and the blood seems to attract a lot of cryptids, a lot of werewolves, Dogman, Bigfoot, and that could be the case. But in both of these targets, Dennis, cursed came up, curses and cursed.
We've talked about that a lot before. The blood sacrifices and the blood and how much the blood keeps cropping up and all this stuff. Blood is a very mystical tie to us. As the Bible says, the blood is the life, and that is so very true. And that's that mystical, supernatural connection with blood and life going on here, and the soul and all these other things. And if there's a curse involved, definitely, that's going to be part of the thing too that goes with that as well. But that blood thing, definitely, whenever there's blood spilled on the land, that land becomes cursed. Okay. And here's the bad thing, Jessica. Here's something to wrap your head around. Once that land is cursed by blood being let on it, it requires more blood. It's like it's caught on that. It's like it's addicted to it. It requires more blood. Once you spill it, it wants more.
Yes, that's actually the case for Corpsewood Manor that I had remote viewed a long time ago. In the data, it said the land requires blood, and someone in the chat had just said that people know where to have these battles at. They know where to have the land disputes. Bounty Hunting Bear said that. Thank you for this. It says that's why they fight wars on certain lands. They know what they are doing. And that's the truth. And that's why, I mentioned, and some people say this is just a rumor and it may not be true, but I was told that Anton LaVey came out and showed those gentlemen where to build their house on what is now called Devil Worshippers Mountain near Tryon, Georgia, up north, right down the road. It's about an hour, I guess, from Chickamauga battlefield. Okay, but nonetheless, there were a lot of land disputes. A lot of stuff went on that land right there, and I've been there before. It's horrible. I don't like the feeling of that place whatsoever. Not at nighttime. But they're smart. They know where to put their stuff.
Here's another thing to think about, and I know your dad would think about this too because he's involved in history a lot, and history's always been my forte too. I love history. It's not just the big battles that went on, Jessica. There were a lot of little battles around in different places in the Civil War and even in the Revolutionary War. A lot of people don't realize this. You could have had something like that happen in your backyard,
Yeah, you sure can. And there's actually I've never hid this fact about my farm out there. We have a house there. I grew up in a house on one side of the property. My aunt and my cousins lived on the other side, and my grandparents had a home on the other side. So it was like a little family, kind of a family compound at one point, okay, when we used to all live out there. And the house that my grandparents owned out there was haunted. And it was so haunted, I would never sleep in that house by myself. I wouldn't even go in there at night by myself. When I got, probably my early 30s or so, like I went to go spend the night. I was having an event down there for my work the next day. So I went to go spend the night. And while I had my dog with me, and somebody, which there's nobody in the house, but somebody slammed the toilet seat down in one of the bathrooms of the house while I was there, and it made me feel like there was somebody there. And the house was haunted, so I ended up leaving that night. I wasn't going to stay there. So.
It can be very unsettling, definitely.
It was horrible.
Like that.
It was, well, we wouldn't stay there. It was a very ancient, and this is the way we always described it, a very ancient energy there, a very ancient energy. And they would open doors, and the cabinets in the kitchen would always be open. We go there and nobody had opened them and stuff like that. It was just a bad feeling. Nobody liked being in the house by themselves. So there's definitely something kind of dark there. And I am very sad that we don't have our farm anymore, but now somebody else can have that ancient energy on their new little subdivision they're going to build there, I guess. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So yeah. And if you live in Paulding and you're going to buy a house out there where there's a big old lake out that way, it's probably my land, probably our family's land, where we have that ancient haunted history. So y'all watch out. Somebody needs to go clear it. Okay. And there may be werewolves out there too.
Yeah, definitely. So, I have been called in many times to different places to do that. It's almost as if spiritual doorways are open in these places, and you have to shut those doors sometimes. So you have to calm the lamb. Here's when I mentioned this earlier about the pig men, the goat men, and stuff like that, and that would make a great show sometime. Definitely think about it. I believe they are, without a doubt, in many instances, elemental type spirits. And here's the interesting thing about that, Jessica. Elemental spirits are definitely strongly connected to the land. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes them so hard to get rid of. They draw their power lines, and the natural power of the earth it makes them so much more powerful than just your average type spiritual being. Mm-hmm. That's the way elementals roll,
Oh yeah, there's definitely some kind of elemental stuff going on out there, I think, but definitely some sort of, I'm going to say, ancient type of energy out there. And I'm not saying it's a bad energy, but it's not good. And yes, we did go down there and do some energetic work to try to soothe it. Okay, try to kind of get it going anywhere. Mm-hmm.
You got a lake, and that's a big spiritual draw right there. That's a spiritual conductor. Water is a spiritual conductor.
Oh yeah,
and that's another factor.
The lake had a lot to do with it. I'm sure it probably did. But we just don't know the real history behind that land out there. We just don't. But I know that I grew up there, and that was my home. Okay, and I loved that land, and I loved it, and I am very sad that we don't have that anymore. And I hate to say it, I love my hometowns and everything, but there's just way too much construction and subdivisions and growth out there, and it wasn't worth our family even keeping that place anymore. Unfortunately, the country wasn't country no more. Okay, so that's why we're not out there. Yeah,
hometowns are kind of like children. Eventually, they grow up. That's the way it goes.
That's true. Yeah, that's why it's important who we vote into all these positions that have this, be able to write off on it and vote off. We put people in office who might just, I don't know, not do what's best for the land and everything like that out there. But that's another question right there, Dennis. Like, where are all these cryptids going to go? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we did have a lot of, Bigfoot. Lord knows what all we had on our land out there. And we have, I think it could have been like a refuge for them, but now it's going to be gone. There's not a whole lot of country left out there, like country land, like farmland and things like that. There's not as much as there used to be. So, I mean, I guess we're pushing them out.
That's why I think they're ending up a lot of times in neighborhoods and suburbs. They're like, the barrier. We got about where I live, and I'm not that far away from you. In the southeast here, we have a problem with bears showing up. They're in the parking lot. They're walking around people's yards. They're trying to get in people's patios. I mean, and it's a sad thing because they're being driven out of their habitat. They're being pushed out, little by little, day after day. And that would have to go with Dogman and Bigfoot or anything else that's a cryptid out there. They're going to get pushed out of their territory sooner or later. They're going to end up in yours.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But they can pretty much be anywhere. I mean, a lot of the people that saw these things, I'm going to say like half and half of them were at home on their own property, and they just were being watched, or they heard the screams in the house or whatever. The other part were just people that were just driving down the road, minding their own business, trying to go have dinner in Hiram. Okay. And that was it. And so it's kind of like a mixed bag there, but thank goodness, not that we know of. We don't know that any of these werewolves or dogmen have hurt anybody out there. But what would we know? Do you know what I mean? Like, would we know? I mean, would the sheriff's department and the medical examiner even talk about it? I mean, I guess we could go through all the, any kind of public medical records and things, or autopsies, or do like requests for them to find out. But unless you have some insider information or inside contacts like sheriff's deputies and things like that, dispatchers, sheriffs,
I was going to tell you as a side note, and I meant to mention this earlier. I was in law enforcement for a long time, and actually I met a deputy from Paulding one time, and we talked about this very thing. I didn't get to talk to him very long about it, but here's something he told me, before we got finished. He said, "There's something out there in those woods. We all know it, and that's why we don't go out there at night."
Yeah. Well, I go towards it. I go out in the woods. I wouldn't stay in that haunted house by myself. I'd rather stay in a tent outside in the yard than stay in that house. I know that sounds weird. Yeah, I feel safer in a tent outside in the yard of that house than I would in that house. There's something not good about it. And you gotta trust your gut, Dennis. If something feels off, it's off. And I stand by that. Actually, there were times where I would go, and we had like a boathouse that had like a pool table in it out there, and I would sleep. I have slept on that pool table before. Okay, like take blankets and pillows and just sleep out there, because I would not go in the house at night and stay out there by myself. I would rather sleep in the boathouse, and that's fine. But anyways, it's these woods is haunted. These woods are haunted.
Yeah,
I know.
When you run into, I've been involved in that for a long time and trying to help people with certain circumstances like that. And I understand why it spooks people. And I'm not just saying it scares you. What it's doing is just making you feel uncomfortable in many ways, and your home and your house is your home. That's your castle, You should feel comfortable there. And when you don't, that really throws you off kilter. It really unbalances you.
It does. Well, you should feel safe in your home. You should feel safe in your house. And lucky for me, I didn't live there. Okay. But, and so I was able to go to my comfy little apartment or my house, wherever I was living at the time, and stay there. And I think that night I was not too far from my mom's house. I ended up driving to my mom's house with my dog and stayed there, because I refused to stay in that house that night when something slammed a toilet seat down. Okay. And it wasn't a possum or a raccoon, okay? If anybody's wondering, there were no animals in there. I checked. It was with force. The haunted toilet seat, Dennis. It was a haunted toilet. It scared me out of a house one night. But maybe it was a werewolf.
Well, you know,
I don't know.
That's very true. These things are negative energy type stuff, and they want to create negative because they feed off of it. And they want to scare you. They want to get you unsettled. They want to get you nervous and worried and all that stuff. That's the way they operate because they feed off of that, you know. And the more they create, the better they like it. And a lot of people don't realize that's the way you have to try to combat these things, by not feeding them, you know. And but these entities, these things, these that are involved in hauntings, they know what they're doing. It's a chain reaction on their part, and they're negativity creates negativity, or the loosh, as you call it. The loosh creates the loosh. It feeds off of it. It's like a weird spiritual perpetual motion machine, you know.
Oh yeah, the loosh, man, that's one of my favorite terms. Brandon, that's a good question. I wonder about certain fires pushing the magical creatures and cryptids out of certain areas. And yeah, it's quite sad thinking about that, because that's their habitats, you know. But places like national parks and state parks and wildlife management areas, that takes up a lot of land around the United States. And a lot of times those lands are actually, there's control burns. And I know what you're talking about is probably wildfires, right? But they do control burns and things like that too. And sometimes a control burn is necessary to kind of get rid of some of that old growth so new growth can come out, you know. And I think the animals just kind of migrate to kind of get away from all that. So, and who knows, it may be going underground. Maybe they're going through portals. They're getting away from it somehow. You know, they've survived this long, I guess, with fires out there and natural disasters and things. So yeah, but in Paulding, I don't know. I don't know if there's been any like recent sightings, like super recent sightings. I'm sure there have been, but I just don't know of any right now. So, I mean, if anybody's listening to this or watching this tonight, and you guys know about any kind of Dogman, werewolf, or Bigfoot sightings in Paulding County or the surrounding counties over in Northwest Georgia, put them in the comments tonight. Put it down in the description, in the comments underneath this video too. And let's, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like we put Paulding on the cryptid map tonight a little bit. And like I said, I was telling the audience, Dennis, that I had no intentions of ever talking about this because I didn't want people to know where I live. Okay, but I don't live there anymore. Okay, but I did. And if people only knew, I kept always thought, man, if people only knew how many Bigfoots and werewolves are where I live, it's astounding. It really is.
You just hope they don't kind of follow you to the new neighborhood, you know.
Oh man. Well, I never had a problem with them on my property. I didn't really see any except for my dad.
Let me tell you something funny there, Jessica. That reminded me of something somebody once told me. We were on a Bigfoot hunt, you know, and somebody said, you know, I want to find them where they're at, but I don't want them going home with me.
No, nobody does. Nobody does. You know, I'm going to show the audience right now. While I've got it pulled up, we'll pull up an alpha coyote. Okay, because this is only an option of what some of these things could be, according to my dad. Okay, according to my dad. Shout out to Dad one more time. Okay, because I know he's watching, and if he's not, I'm going to make him watch it. Okay, but let me pull this screen up, and we're going to look at alpha coyotes, because this is what he is positive that what we were talking about are alpha coyotes, what he saw, because he could not wrap his head around what he saw other than it being an alpha coyote. Now, this is someone who doesn't think in terms of werewolves and dogmen. He thinks in terms of what is in the area and what he would know. Now, I don't know. When you pull up alpha coyote, they just look like a bunch of coyotes to me. You know, I don't.
And here's something else you got out there, Jessica. We need to mention this, okay? And your dad will probably know about this too. You got coy wolves, you know. They're a breed of their own, and we've got plenty of them out there. They're half coyote, half wolf, and a little dog, by the way. They got some dog in them too. This is a different breed altogether, and they can be very good hunters.
Okay, well, I mean, that's just a plain old coyote right there. I mean, when you put an alpha coyote, I don't know. I don't think what he saw was a coyote, and I don't see a single one that is all black. So I don't know if anybody in the chat.
That looks like a coy wolf there.
It does.
It looks like a coy wolf.
Yeah. Dennis, are you familiar with an all black coyote? Have you heard of that before? I have not.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. And
You
there's
have?
even talk
Let's
of
see.
blue tinted coyotes in California.
Really?
They have sort of a bluish
Okay.
tint to them. Have they got into some kind of chemical, or are they some kind of escaped government experiment, or what?
Oh,
I
there
have
we go.
heard reports of that.
Okay. I take that back. Here's black coyotes right here. And a black coyote in Georgia. Let's click on this one. All right, that's a pretty good sized coyote right there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I take it all back. It could be. I mean, that definitely could even, if it got up on two legs and had raccoon hands, then we'd say that's a Dogman. But that's a big old black coyote right there. Okay. So there you go, Dad.
Yep.
If my dad's watching right now. So there are black coyotes out there. Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. There you have it. Maybe what is in South Paulding was a alpha coyote. Maybe it was a gigantic coyote. Could have been that my dad saw, but that doesn't mean or discount. It doesn't mean that those people who had these encounters with a 9 to 10 foot werewolf off Ridge Road
And here's another
didn't see
thing
that.
you need to consider too, Jessica. There have been some wolves released in the mountains of North Carolina, and it would not be that far fetched that they could not migrate as far down into Georgia. Now, come on. I mean, it's not that far away.
Yes, that's right. Let's see. Monica was asking, what is a coy wolf? Let me pull this back up again. Melanistic coyote.
The coy wolf is
Thanks,
a hybrid of a coyote, a wolf, usually a red wolf, and a dog. There's some dog in it as well.
Okay, here we'll pull it up so I can show you guys. Okay, what does a coy wolf look like? Okay, I'm gonna have to type it in. Coy wolf. Okay, let's see what they look like, because it just looks like another
They're bigger,
like a coyote.
They're bigger than coyotes. Yeah, they're a little bigger. They get a little bit more of their bulk from the wolf. They get a little bit bigger than coyote. Coyote is not much bigger than a mid-sized dog, but now these coy wolves are somewhat bigger than coyotes. Yeah.
Good grief, that one looks rough right there.
I've seen them. I've seen them in the wild, and
wow.
You can tell the difference. There's a big difference. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It looks more like a wolf there. Yeah.
It does, man. Those are some pretty big looking dogs right there.
Red wolf. Yeah,
it does.
It looks like a red wolf.
Okay, here's one more thing that I did want to talk about tonight before we go, because my dad told me. See, my dad, my uncle, he's not actually my uncle, is my dad's cousin, used to be the sheriff out there. Okay, and there's a coy wolf for.
I'm gonna tell you something. To me, it's my own personal thing. I don't know how you feel about it, Jessica, but I love wolves and coyotes. I think a lot of people go down on coyotes, but they are supreme predators. They are smart individuals. They know how to survive. I think in some ways they're even smarter than wolves. I like coyotes and wolves, coy wolves, and all that kind of stuff. They're beautiful, I think, magnificent animals, and they're very much needed in nature.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and I mean, they do like to eat other little pets too, though. So y'all gotta be careful. If you see one, don't go pet that dog. Okay, don't pet that dog, y'all. If you see a coyote, just leave it. I don't know, unless you're just a super amazing nature person, leave them alone.
That reminds me of that old joke, about the guy that's standing there with a dog, and another man walks up and says, "Does your dog bite?" He said, "No, my dog doesn't bite." No. And the guy reaches down to pet the dog and likes to tear his hand off, and the guy says, "I thought you said your dog didn't bite." He said, "That ain't my dog."
Oh, it's not.
So be careful about that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one last thing I want to talk about tonight is I just looked at the clock. It said 1:44:44. I'll be, and I just saw Amy write something in the chat about 4/4s. Okay. So, anyways, synchronicities tonight, y'all. So my dad reminded me today when I was talking to him. He said, "Well, there were." He said, "You would not believe the amount of calls that came in for people that spotted lions. Lions, what they called lions in Paulding County." He said people would call into the sheriff's department and report lions because animals walking on 4 legs with a lion's mane is what he said.
Are you talking
And,
about African lion or mountain lion?
Yeah, he just said lions with a mane. He said that's what people were calling because they couldn't tell what they were looking at.
Oh, that'd be
So
a mountain. That would be an African lion. Yeah.
Well, he said that he doesn't
Well, let
think
me
they were
tell you
actual
something,
lions.
okay? Now, and let me tell you
Mhm.
something about that. While I'm thinking about it, because this actually happened to me now, okay? Right here where I'm living, where I'm sitting tonight, about 1.5 miles away. There was a report one night to the police department that there was an African lion walking the streets. Not that far from my house now. And people thought, somebody's, been drinking a little bit too much or something here. Come to find out, it was real. The guy actually owned, in the neighborhood not that far away from me, he owned an African lion, and the thing got out one night. And they were able to catch it and put it back in. Now, that's in my neighborhood. That could be in your neighborhood, and you not know it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's kind of scary. Well, actually, so my dad lived, bringing up my dad, this is like my dad's show tonight, y'all. So my dad was living somewhere. Okay, I'm not gonna say exactly where, but where he lives now. He was telling me that this man used to live in this there's a house that's abandoned down the road from where he lives. And he said that if I'm getting the story right, he said that it was like I'm just gonna say I guess he was a drug dealer or something. And he had a whole bunch of exotic pets out there. And in his house now, I want to say he had lions and tigers and bears, like literally lion, tigers, and bears. And he let them all out one night because I guess he was getting busted or something. I don't know what happened exactly, but my dad said that he had released all his wild animals, and he said it was a complete nightmare for animal control and the police department.
People get exotic animals, Jessica, definitely.
Yeah.
My friend Ken Gerhardt, we talked about the Gervadin, the beast of Gervadin, could have been a hyena that somebody owned. It's not that far-fetched. People could not have these things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, people have really strange pets. Like my friend Daryl, who comes in this chat sometimes, he shows up in the chat. He lives in Atlanta. We've been friends for a long time, and he's always had exotic pets and stuff. And we'll be talking about something super exotic, like I don't know, can't remember what all we've talked about before. But he was like, "Well, I used to have that. I used to have that. I used to have these." So yeah, I never put it past Daryl to have these exotic pets. Okay, but people have strange pets, y'all. And these hyenas, I had Mr. E on the show from Cryptids of the Corn a while back, and we talked about the Appalachian hyenas and how they got here and why they're here today and how long have they always been here. And they're a long time ago. There used to be, like, when royalty would come over here, and if you've been paying attention, we talked about the ancient Egyptian settlements all over here and stuff. Well, royalty, people from other countries and stuff, from Africa and the Middle East and China, wherever, Asia, Europe, they would bring menageries, I think is what you call it, of exotic animals over here. And you better believe some of those wild animals might have gotten let loose or escaped out of those menageries and ended up in the mountains and stuff. So maybe that's how the hyenas got here. Maybe I've been told there are Appalachian hyenas out there.
Well, once upon a time, back in prehistoric times, America had hyenas. They roamed the plains and all that. It wouldn't be that far-fetched that they might have been brought over by Egyptians and all that. You never know. But that's very interesting. What if they're still out there? What if they didn't die out? And you have to ask that question a lot with a lot of things in cryptozoology, Jessica. Is it still with us? Because evidence points to that, it seems like sometimes, That's another thing you got to think about when you come to these things. And by the way, I was going to say this about werewolves. Somebody had that in the chat. If you ever actually meet a 100% werewolf, that's going to probably be the last thing you ever do, because a werewolf's not going to leave you alive most of the time. If you get away from a werewolf and live to tell about it, you have been incredibly, incredibly lucky. Because this thing is an apex psychotic killer. It's not going to stop till it does you in. And that's why I say that's the first thing. When somebody comes up, you think it's a dogman, you think it's a werewolf. I said, well, if they reported it, it's probably a dogman, because the werewolves, you're not going to live through that. You're not going to end up reporting it. And that's why a lot of werewolf reports out there, and believe me, I've studied this for years and years. The very first case I had when I was 15 years old that I actually actively investigated was a werewolf sighting. So I know werewolves, okay? And let me say this. I would not want to meet a werewolf because that would be the last thing probably I would ever see. All right. And I would not wish that on anybody. But the Dogman, on the other hand, like I say, you may live to talk about that. But now there may be something you might catch Dogman on a bad day, and then you got a problem. You know, he may be having a bad day. He may attack you. That there is some of that on record too, because I've poured over thousands of these reports that have come in on these things, and that's what leads me to believe that you're gonna have a better experience with Dogman than you definitely will with a werewolf.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And Jason, you had to bring up the Tiger King. Oh my gosh, I think Maureen and I were talking about this yesterday. My favorite all-time Halloween costume ever. I dressed up like the Tiger King. Yes, I did. I looked really weird, and I scared all the kids. Okay, I looked like the Tiger King. I had the mustache and everything. It was so weird. It was horrible. But it was so fun. It was the best. I love doing ugly costumes, y'all. I'm just saying. I'm not saying he's ugly. I'm just saying I looked really ugly in that costume, and it was awesome. Okay, and if you guys are lucky, I might show y'all a picture sometime of me dressed up like the Lion King or the Tiger King, not the Lion King, the Tiger King. Get it right, okay? But yeah, I think about that.
It makes me want to put on my hunting hat. I put on my hunting hat thinking about that.
Oh my gosh, yes. I don't know. Bless your heart if you got tigers and lions and bears as pets. I don't think so. I think that those, along with snakes, are bad pets. I'm just saying. And I'll stick to my German Shepherd, my little whiny German Shepherd over here. I'll stick to that. But yeah, there are a plethora. We're going to use a spaced out radio term, plethora of werewolves, Bigfoots, and Dogmen in Paulding County, y'all. And it is only mere miles from where the Georgia werewolf attack was in Rome, Georgia, Floyd County, which happened just a few years ago. And Kenny Starfox from Midnight Lycanthropy and the NADP came on. We talked about that a while back. Dennis, there's also one very famous werewolf, the Georgia werewolf, buried down in Talbot County at the Troop Herd Corridor. That was Emily Isabella Burt. And that is, I'm going to say that's probably about an hour from Paulding or so, maybe about an hour, which is not that far in the big scheme of things.
I'll tell you something funny about that, Jessica. Whenever I hear about that, and that's a very famous case. I've studied it for many years. It's a very fascinating case. It's in Talbot. Okay, Talbot is also the last name of the Wolfman. Remember that, Lawrence Talbot? Okay, I think that's a weird connection.
Huh? I wonder if they based that. Which Wolfman are you referring to? That is Talbot. Is that from a book or a movie?
You gotta wonder. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's weird. Okay. Well, yeah, that is probably not a coincidence then. Okay, from what you just told me. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in watching a show, I did a show on Emily Isabella Burt before, and I highly recommend you guys go back and watch that. If I can remember, I will put a link in the comments below this video or in the description box. And if you guys are interested in Georgia's werewolf, I'm not saying all these other werewolves are her descendants or anything, but it does make you wonder. And a common denominator of both of these targets tonight for the werewolves of Paulding are curses.
We did you and I did a great show on the werewolf of Anderson, where I live, actually.
Yes.
So, it's good when you kind of have a werewolf in the neighborhood sometimes, I guess. It's very interesting. But that was tied into the very first investigation I was talking about earlier. When I heard that, I said, God, is he back? Because I knew about, the famous one that actually made, international headlines back in the day. And that was, I think, 1946, I think. But that was before my time. But it's fascinating stuff, that you got something that close to you sometimes,
Oh yeah, for sure. You and I both have hometown werewolves, And back then I really I didn't want to talk about my hometown werewolves because I didn't want to tell everybody it was my hometown, back then. But now I'll talk about it. I'm loud and proud. I'll talk about it. The Paulding Werewolves. Yes. I do not believe that I am descended from any werewolves, y'all.
Georgia has a long history of werewolves. You got Rome, Georgia, with the Romulus and Remus statue going on. You got all.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia's got a definite history of werewolves.
Yes. Yeah. Sovereign Cosmic Wildman said Dogman and other large cryptids are responsible for some car break-ins. And I think that is a good point. Okay. Also, thieves are also responsible as well. Human thieves. Okay. But and then hi, Monica. She says that a dog man broke into the detective's house and tore up his kitchen. He went to shoot it and it took off. Oh my gosh. Did that happen in real life? Because that's kind of wild. Yeah. Unless it's in a movie. I don't know.
Sometimes,
that's pretty cool.
Having studied a lot of these reports, I have noticed that dogmen sometimes can break into barns and houses, and I think they're looking for food, basically. Yes. That may be part of the thing going on there. But werewolves, like I said, on the other hand, I have to tell you sometime about a horrific story about a werewolf that actually came after. It stalked this woman. And it came after her and her boyfriend's house one night and tore the wall out of this house trying to get in that house. They barely escaped with their lives. They never actually saw the werewolf, but they could hear it and what it was doing outside. And they caught a glimpse of it, but I mean, they didn't come face to face with it. But that thing was stalking her, and it ruined their lives, Jessica, in more ways than one. The incident itself. Yeah, and they went on to get married. The man and the woman, and because this happened to them, it messed their lives up so much they ended up getting divorced, and finally her ex-husband unalived himself because of this furry incident that happened with a werewolf. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it is tragic, and when you experience something like that, and you're not expecting to see that kind of stuff. First of all, you could be like my dad. And, you automatically, your brain goes to, it's a wolf, or it's a coyote or whatever. And if it had stood up on two legs and ran off, that would be different, I guess. So I think that it could have been a alpha coyote that my dad saw. Could have been. But considering it was at the same time frame as all these werewolf sightings in the area, real like on two legs, I don't know. You just got to kind of write it down and put it to the side. Just forget it. Don't forget about it.
You got something walking around on two legs. You don't have a normal animal there, okay? And like I said, that happened to me that night in the North Carolina mountains. We were tracking something that was walking on four, and all of a sudden he went to two. You got a question. You got to wonder about that when that happens. You're not dealing with a regular animal.
Oh yeah. Oh, Monica. Okay, so Monica was talking about Lon Strickler. I think he's with Phantoms and Monsters. I think on YouTube. And he's got a website, I think, because I've seen it before. He goes on Spaced Out Radio with Dave sometimes. Yeah. She says
he talks.
Monica says he talks about a case he had in Maryland. A detective was up late doing work in his office. He heard something outside. He opened the door. It was a dog man. He slammed the door and it broke. And that was the beginning of what she had said with her other comment. And she said the dog man broke in the detective's house and tore up his kitchen. He went to shoot it and it took off. Wow, that's really cool. I have to look that one up because I'm always down for a good firsthand encounter story for sure when it comes to stuff like this. But yeah,
they're probably looking for food.
Yeah, they're just looking for food, and that's why I've been hearing so many stories about Bigfoots and dogmen eating people's opening up their grills. Like we had Flat Rock on a couple weeks ago, and he was telling us about how we listened to the audio of some Bigfoots on his property lifting up his grill and licking the grease trap in his grill, like the bacon grease and the meat grease. They're looking for food, and we are an easy meal for them. And I don't mean like humans are an easy meal. Our resources are easy for them to eat. If we're feeding our dogs,
remember something. something, as big as Bigfoot, and we've seen him. You and I both have seen Bigfoot. We know it's real, but something that big, it got to require a lot of food, a lot of food for its energy. It's got to be constantly doing the survival thing, looking for
Yeah.
food. That's going to require a lot of your time if you're a Bigfoot or a Dogman or whatever you may be out there. Even if you're some of these feral people we've talked about and all that, most of your day is going to be spent looking for something to eat, wherever
Oh
you
yeah.
find it,
Oh yeah.
and
My
whatever it
whole
may
day.
be.
That sounds like me. My whole day is just spent looking for stuff to eat too. So we have a lot in common. I'm just kidding. I don't even think I ate today. I need to eat something
I
tonight
spent a lot of
before I
time
go to
looking
bed.
for stuff, but I spent a lot of time looking for something to eat.
Oh yeah.
We all do. I mean, that's part of our routine. We don't even realize it. That's part of our route. That's part of being a living thing that needs food to live on. Okay, that's what you do. You look for something. And if you're not going to McDonald's or you're not fixing your dinner or something, you got food on your mind. That's part of your survival.
It is. It is. Sovereign says the car break-ins I've heard about are usually food related. Hide your food and coolers from outside view. Yeah, and also bears will break in too if you got food in your car.
I had a werewolf report not long ago that somebody was telling me about. Actually, the werewolf attacked a car. He tore this car. He peeled the top of this car like a sardine can. And luckily, these people just luckily got away from this. That was, like I say, one time in a million. They actually survived this. But the guys that come to pick the car up and all tow it in said, "What happened? What did you roll over in this car or something? What happened?" And they said, "You never will believe us when we tell you what happened." That's power, Jessica. Oh my gosh, that's strong. That's even stronger. A bear could not do that. I don't think.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, but we've got a 9 to 10 foot werewolf in Paulding County, so I would think something that big could do that. Any kind of Bigfoot. They're a lot stronger than us humans, for sure. And Damien has an interesting comment here, and this is really cool. He said, Earth shadow side night is a negative reverberation of the sun's photons. Peak around 3:30 a.m. These creatures dwell in those parts. Okay.
That's what makes them creatures of the night.
They are creatures of
the night. Because,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They draw an energy of darkness from this, from the darkness. They draw an energy from it. It is sort of like the reverse, a magnetic reversal of daytime. They say that is what you got to look at it this way: light is life, and darkness is death. In many aspects, there are different types of energy. Dark energy is negative energy. Light energy is positive energy. Makes perfect sense when you think about it.
It does. It does. And Margaret, thank you so much. M Love, thank you for the super sticker, super chat. It says gas money for expedition. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. I could always use gas money.
We can always use gas money.
Yeah, we sure could. Thank you for that, Margaret. You're so sweet. And I got to meet Margaret at the Myrtle Beast Bigfoot Festival about a month or so ago. So thank you so much, Margaret. You're so sweet. And I hope your dogs are doing good too. I appreciate that. Colleen says Sasquatch may be out stealing people's greenhouse garden plants too. Yeah. I mean, I think Bigfoots, and I've heard so many stories about Bigfoots taking people's food, okay, and their animals' food. Not greenhouse garden plants.
Yesterday. I had, I do a lot of podcasts, and somebody asked me that one day. What does Bigfoot eat? I say anything he can find.
Anything he can find. Anything he can pick up. That's right. That's right. Anything that he can pick up, and I don't blame him because I pretty much eat anything I can find too. Okay, but they do prefer chickens, small animals, and things like that. I know that from going over to Farrah's house at that Skinwalker cave that we investigated. They do like chickens, and one of these reports out of Paulding, whatever, I think it was a Bigfoot, did look like it was taking chickens out of a chicken house. There's a lot of chicken houses. There used to be a lot of chicken houses in Paulding. Now where the chicken houses used to be are subdivisions. I'm just saying.
There's a craze going on right now on Facebook where they're doing these Bigfoot videos, and they're doing it with AI, but it looks incredibly real. And there's one where there's Bigfoot sitting there, and he's got a pet chicken. So this is my pet chicken. I named him Whitey. He's talking about him, and then the next scene, he's eating fried chicken.
Oh,
So
fried
definitely,
chicken.
Bigfoot knows how to survive.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Somebody fried up a chicken for the Bigfoot. Yeah, my friend David Pardue comes on the show sometimes out of North Carolina. He's taken like rotisserie chickens and stuff to the Bigfoots before. And but those are, I do not recommend gifting personally and like taking food, unless, a lot of people do it. Okay. I don't recommend it though, but he's had a long-standing, decades-long relationship with the Bigfoots that he's in communication with out there.
Well,
Okay, so
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, Jessica, because gifting, you got to be careful with the gifting thing. It might go the wrong way sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And listen, I look on Bigfoot as like other wildlife. You don't really need to interfere with them, okay? And you don't need to. It's like you don't want to feed deer. You don't really want to do that because they become dependent upon you, and they lose some of their edge out there in the wild. You don't want that. You don't want any animal to lose their edge, even if it's Bigfoot, you know? So be very careful and very selective how you go about gifting, whatever you want to call it. I don't believe in that too much myself. It can have some bad results sometimes.
it can. Bounty hunting bear, that is too funny. They need to eat too, and that's true. And I say that about our squirrels outside because I feed the birds just about every day. I have like bird feeders all over the place, and I put the bird seed in, and the squirrels eat the majority of it out of at least one of the feeders. It's just nothing but squirrels. And I'm thinking, man, well, the squirrels have to eat too. Okay, I don't get mad at the squirrels, y'all. They got to eat too. Everything in this world has to eat, and it's just I just take it as I'm just showing them some love, taking them some squirrel feed instead of bird feed. Okay, squirrel feed. I call those ones the squirrel feeders, and the other ones are the bird feeders out there because everybody deserves to eat, y'all. Everything, every little thing, unless they're eating us, and then I don't know about that. Okay. Sovereign says heaps of trash.
Birds and squirrels, you get away with that, but I don't see gifting Dogman and Bigfoot. You might have a problem with that.
Yeah, you might.
But birds and squirrels, yeah, hummingbirds and all that, that's good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the birds got to eat, y'all, and so do the squirrels. This is interesting. Sovereign says heaps of trash, like at trash recycling centers, attract invisible monsters. Go there, notice how your cell phone battery drains, indicative of interdimensional presence. Oh my gosh. Well, don't like dark entities and stuff really like being around.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about cursed lands. Like dark entities will drain your batteries, right, Dennis?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Any kind of magnetic interference, you definitely got something going on there. That's why I usually, I don't know if you can see my watch, but I always got a compass on my watch. You keep an eye on that when you're out in the woods. If things get weird, you're around something like that. You need to be very careful. We were talking about that the other day with on the road less travel. I think a lot of people disappear like that because they're fooling around with portals and they don't really realize what they're messing with. Be very, very careful if you ever have any kind of strong magnetic interference going on, or EMF fields that you run into. Be very, very careful. If something is freaky going on, you need to be very careful with that because I think a lot of people disappear because of that. I'm not saying they all do, but a lot of them I think are going that way. Who knows where they're ending up at? And if you got some kind of interdimensional shift going on, you better be on your toes and be real sharp.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, pay attention to the energy, everybody around you. And Long Island Bigfoot says freedom tater logs, American chicken fingers. I talked about chicken fingers earlier, right? May the 4th be with you. Yes, I hope everybody has an abundance of chicken fingers and tater logs tomorrow and celebrates, however you deem
Well, we got something
worthy.
here, Jessica. If you ever come to see me in my international, I will buy you a bird dog. You know what a bird dog is?
A bird dog?
Bird dog. They originate here in Anderson, right where I live. This is world famous now. The bird dog is actually a chicken strip served on a hot dog bun with if you can have onions on it if you want, or if you're not, you can also have bacon bits on it and honey mustard and cheese. You talking about good? I love a good bird dog.
Oh my gosh. Well, it sounds good. I saw somebody the other day that made burger dogs, and they kind of look like poop or something a little bit, but I'm sure they tasted good, but it's just not aesthetically pleasing as a round patty. I'm just saying. Okay, so be careful about making burger dog, y'all. Okay. I know the things we see on the internet, and I'm only bringing that up because tomorrow is the 4th of July. It is Independence Day, and I really appreciate you being here tonight, Dennis. This has been a really fantastic show tonight, actually, and I am not going to keep everybody. I know we probably need to go get our sleep tonight because there's going to be a lot of fireworks tomorrow, and we got to go protect our pets' ears, right? For all of us who have dogs and cats and stuff, from all the banging and explosions tomorrow night, and probably tonight too, if y'all live in neighborhoods that have a lot of fireworks and stuff. So, but man, this has been awesome. I hope everybody enjoyed this whole Paulding County werewolf thing. And if you live in Paulding, shout out to all my Paulding County peeps out there. And yes, I was born and raised over there, and my people still live out there. I still got folks out there, and I still do visit from time to time. And I always have my eye out for the Paulding County werewolf. South Paulding and North Paulding, they're everywhere, as well as Bigfoot. So Dennis, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I would love for you to tell everybody where they can find you and about your YouTube channel and whatever else you got going on.
Okay, well, Monday nights with my good friend Gerald Fountain, we do the Road Less Travel. That's at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Wednesday, I'm going to have some special guests on Wednesday on Hunting the Shadows, the She Squatchers. That's a all-female group of Sasquatch hunters, and they're going to be on Hunting the Shadows with me, 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then tomorrow night, I will be doing the Paranormal Point of View. That's where we do book reviews and stuff like that, and we just have open discussion and talk about things. I tell about some of my former cases and stuff like that. So that's going to be tomorrow night. And also I can be seen on Chantel Mayberg's show, Aquarius Rising. I was on there today. Great show. If you missed it, go check it out. I talked about the 9 gates of black magic on there. It was a very good show.
Nice.
Also, you can reach me if you need to. I have a consultation service. Or you just want to report something, tell me a story. I got some interesting stories people tell me, definitely. You can contact me at denniswcarroll.com. I have a Patreon and also membership now open in the Shadow Wolf Club. If you want to be a Shadow Wolf, you need to join us. We have some fun stuff going on. And that's it.
Oh my gosh. That's wonderful. You guys, please go over and show your love at Hunting the Shadows on YouTube, Patreon. And if you need anything, y'all reach out to Dennis over at denniswcarroll.com. And thank you again for being here, Dennis. I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight as much as I did. I got to go solo dolo for a good bit of the show tonight and got to give you guys the rundown on Paulding County. And shout out again to everybody from Paulding and from that side of the state of Georgia. And please stay safe out there, y'all. Not only do I wish you all a wonderful Independence Day tomorrow, everybody here in America, okay, y'all let freedom ring, okay? And have a wonderful holiday tomorrow. Please be safe. Come back with all your fingers, y'all, okay? I want to see everybody keep all their fingers after tomorrow, okay? Because we know fireworks are a thing and drinking is a thing. And speaking of that, if you're going to Lake Lanier tomorrow, please be safe. I don't recommend swimming in that lake, okay? But anyways, yeah, have a wonderful 4th, y'all. And like I said, stay safe out there. Keep your head on a swivel. And we don't have any reports of these werewolves in Paulding attacking anybody. I think everybody's safe. I think. Don't live in fear. Live in awareness. Watch your 6 always. And come back and see me on Saturday night. I'll be back on the hunt at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to have a really fun time. So come back and see me then. All right, Dennis, have a wonderful 4th. Okay, and we'll see you guys back here on Saturday. All right, go Wolfpack. Bye, y'all.